Okay, so what we pulled from the survey that we took yesterday, you can see highlighted here. As I mentioned to some of you in the room before, when it came to kind of how good do we feel about the purpose statement that we had written, it was about 80% said, yeah, that looks good. And then we had some feedback from the rest, which we'll look at incorporating. When it got into the practices or the things we were going to go do and the people, the participants, we got more feedback, which was great and reflected here. So, you know, importance of including all the providers, not just trauma surgeons. So you see a couple verbatims down there or quotes. And again, kind of similarly, critical to involve and solve for challenges beyond trauma centers. So, you know, maybe that's more about kind of resource setting, and the first one is about participants, but or audiences, but they're sitting in that same bucket in the P2P structure. So we'll be looking at this. We'll refine as needed, and then send that back out to folks. And then we did the session today on structure. So thank you to all of you who participated in that. And the key takeaway from our power dot exercise. So again, we'll capture all of this and share it back out, but a lot of interest around that central steering committee. And one of the outputs of that committee was really going to be about prioritization, like what are the key areas where we should be focusing. A lot of conversation as well around subcommittees or organizing around the data. And so I think we'll be, again, sharing that back out. And I'm sure as Lacey sends out a note about how you all would like to participate, you'll see some of that reflected back. That's it.
And I'm going to quick recap our pilot session that we had, as well as the input sessions that we had with everyone around the novel consensus process. So appreciate the engagement, particularly from those who were in the pilot session and in the tools and in the guidance, helping us kind of work through that process and what it would look like. I think a couple of key themes that emerged. One, I think that, you know, this refined process is something that really can work with some refinement. Overall, we appreciated the positive feedback, all of the productive feedback around kind of potential ways to refine, but it was great to get validation that this core process and methods really have the potential to be utilized and scaled to generate consensus on adaptive guidance. The second key theme that we all picked up was that a framework for how we make this adaptive is something that's required, right? You try to make it adaptive for every situation, you end up boiling the ocean. It's not scalable. It's not something that really can be brought to several use cases. So balancing that adaptability with scalability and usability will require some sort of framework or guardrails in order to think about how we make guidance adaptable in a way that makes sense for the users. We also heard a lot about information quality being paramount, which is not a surprise at all, right? Outcomes come first. This is something that we believe will be achievable with a combined approach that leverages kind of Gen AI synthesized published information coupled with that ultra-critical expert validation to get to that final guidance that is something that is safe for the patients and has quality at the peak. The fourth piece that I think, you know, the pilot session really kind of validated this, diversity in the expert set that is establishing this guidance is critical and ensures that the guidance set is in fact comprehensive for all potential users. And so that's one thing that we will absolutely take forward from this. As we think about kind of scaling this process is how we think about making sure that that expert set is in fact the right one, so that we are able to deliver adaptive guidance that is inclusive for all providers in all settings. On the right-hand side of the slide here, or the left-hand side, you'll see in the pilot session, we were able to get through kind of a substantial portion of the select piece that we were working through and get input and make modifications. I think the next steps there for us will be to take all of that input, synthesize it, and create that refined decision tree that we then go back to that pilot group and get final validation so that we can kind of prove this process end to end, as well as take the input from the process session, put those things together, and think about how we effectively scale this. Like I said, thank you particularly to our pilot participants who are guinea pigs. And I think we're really excited to continue to progress this forward. Also welcome any thoughts from those that were in the pilot session if they have anything they want to share. Okay. All right, we're moving. People want to get out of here. Okay. Drum roll on conference superlatives and gifts, which is fun. So thanks to everybody for participating, filling these in, putting them at the back. Our first category is Best Mic Drop Moment. And the winner is LJ Punch. And it didn't say what it was for, but it might have been using the punchline. All right. Our next category, the best use of an acronym that no one knew. Dr. Jonathan Stallings for Simon Daughter. And we have lost him. Virtual, cool. All right, our most inspiring is Julie Ford. All right. Real mic drops. They leave us with their impact and they're out. That's it. Okay. And our final one, the conference wouldn't run without several submissions for Ashley. And then, no, you want to do it the other way? Okay, JK. All right. All you.
Last year we kept you hostage and listened to each other breathe while you did the survey. We're not going to do that this time. We're going to trust that you'll do it, because I think the part of what I want you to reflect on is what I'm going to share with you now. And then we'll still finish a little early. Okay. So last time some of the feedback we got at the end was it wasn't tight enough about like what are, one, some people didn't understand what we were doing when we were in the room, and then two, what are we doing next? And so we tried to be tighter on objectives this time, and then are trying to be tighter on follow-up this time. There's some casual porosity to this on purpose, and also we will do better for structure. So what you can expect from us: prioritizing funding to carrying us into and past 2026, right? We have a small bucket of money from AHRQ, and it's a 3-year grant. We're in year 2. So we have money to have a meeting next year, and also obviously everything we're asking. I mean, the money doesn't even let you buy the food. People are donating that, right? Like, we don't have money to scale. These guys are donating their services. So it's not funding the whole project, it's empowering this meeting. So we have, fortunately, thanks to AAT, we got money there, and then a commitment for investment from the Gates Foundation pending vetting of Coalition National Trauma Research and Background, which we know we're going to pass because it's center. And then BCG donating their efforts, as you've seen here, but also donating time following to scale some of the stuff that we've talked about. We've submitted a Google Accelerator grant. We submitted to the MHSRS abstract, which is not a grant, but it's where you tell the DHA, the DOD, hey, we think we have a solve for a problem that you have, that is an opportunity for discussion. Plan to pursue within the next few months will be an ARPA-H, AHRQ, or R18. Just talking to Dr. Stallings this afternoon, looking at how he suggested NDMS, the National Disaster something, as an opportunity. So I will say the details don't matter so much as to say that, like, we know that we have to continue to get launch money before we get to something that's sustainable as a business plan, and we're pursuing that actively. And then continuing to ensure key partners engaged and formal roles defined. right? So like we are a coalition of the willing, and that's on purpose. And also we will start to build some structure. Like Natalie Myers, the AI colleague, you know, you've been on calls with me probably where I say like, you have to tell me not to chase you, or you have to opt out. Otherwise I assume you're enthusiastically on board and participating. And so we're turning some of that into more discrete, like what would be a role that feels good to you and how can we partner? This is my last minute editing. Continue to sensitize the community. We'll do a spotlight session at the Committee on Trauma meeting next month or soon. And then at the Maddox meeting, there's this awesome overlap with the veterinary community, really talk about translational medicine. And so they invited me to come talk about this initiative of how do we get evidence into practice, including for the care of working animals. And they have some, you know, a military partnership also. And then as Kat alluded to, we're going to take time to synthesize what we've done here to come back to you with tactical asks for commitments. Last time we just said, like, do you want to sign up for something? Do you want to help with publications? And it was vague and it wasn't strategic. And so we're going to take time to do that more intentionally. And then where we're going next is, you know, now I've got us in 3 phases. We will always bounce back to that conceptualization and make sure we're talking about the right problem, but we recognize that these next 3 phases, as everybody has established over the last few days, are interconnected. We're designing for impact, are we going to measure impact, et cetera. And I think then I'm going to kind of anchor us in some principles that I think we're grounded in, and that also, like, you know, frankly, like, there's an opportunity cost to this whole thing. I have a very lovely 10 and 7-year-old child, right? Like, if I'm going to keep coming to Chicago in the winter, there's some things that need to be in play for it to be value investment, acknowledging that we're all giving something up to be here, something really meaningful to be here. And so I think the like principles for me are, you know, this seems irrational and ridiculous, but who benefits from ATLS? Everyone, everywhere. Right, and it might be that you're not using actually ATLS, but you're using a nationally adapted version that was based on that education. It might be et cetera, but everybody everywhere benefits from the fact that however many years ago, ATLS was developed and disseminated and has a global imprint. And so that, I think, is anchoring our ambition. And then impact, I think, really we don't want this to be a one-off. The number of stories of like, oh, there was this cool program at X and then the leadership changed, or there was this registry and then the funding changed. Like, that is not worth any of our time to do this in February in Chicago, or the time in between. I love all the Chicagoans. Sorry, I'm gonna quit on that. Won't be invited back to Chicago. But that really we're leaning into this has to be a virtuous cycle that is self-sustaining, where there's an alignment of incentives where everybody goes, yeah, that's right. Content generators are being compensated, patients are getting a value add, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have to spell that out for you because you guys have spelled it out over the last day and a half. And then I think, like, how can we have both of those things? How can we, like, have the whole world involved, which means, like, it has to be accessible, maybe free, and also have it be sustainable and not have to ask for funding from unpredictable sources. And I love, this is another one where I like heard the story and then pretend like I know the details, but I grabbed this about the TED Talks, right? There's like some literature or some I think it was in a magazine about TED made a decision at a key point in their history to give it away for free. And so this is like a narrative of when the founder was interviewed. And so he lost his position in the private sector, inherited this nonprofit thing, and said we were pushed to adopt a strategy of radical generosity because of the constraints of the nonprofit. And giving away all of our good content at this point and just sharing it felt like the right thing to do. So it sounds like some of it they did have agency. It was the right thing. But the fear, and like thanks to LJ for calling out the underlying incentives and the things we all need to face, but the fear was that that would kill the conference. Why would you go to an expensive conference if all the content was available for free to any Joe Schmo? And that makes sense, but not everything that makes sense is true. And I think we will be grounded in doing the right thing is always the right thing. Like, even if you don't know how it's going to work out, doing the right thing is always the right thing. And so this is from the charge that was co-developed with the final decision makers of the professional societies. And again, I'll nod to Dr. Stewart and Dr. Bolger, who really provided just moral steering of that process. But I think in this moment, we can all ask ourselves that. And if you are on board with this or a version of this that's better because everything can be iteratively improved, then we want to work together. And that the structure of that, we are formally engaging to see what's the best way to do this, because really all we care about is solving a problem. And so it's the function that matters. The form is in development. And then I Googled it because I'd never heard of it before, but I think Mitch Cohen was spot on of like this pre-competitive network space. So apparently this is the principle of pre-competitive spaces allows you to develop, acquire, validate new scientific knowledge that can ultimately solve a concrete problem, but you've got people who are working together. You generate hypotheses and investigations versus in the competitive space, people are already siloed, their incentives are not aligned, everyone's just trying to get a piece of the pie. We are in the pre-competitive space. We're in the work together space and we get to define what it looks like. And then this just happened to come from University of Washington. I just Googled scarcity mindset. But I think like we need to exist in an abundance mindset, not a scarcity mindset, in order to do this differently than it's been done in the past. Otherwise, it'll just be another story that Matt Burton, who's participated in all the stories, can tell 5 years from now of like, yeah, they tried to do it and it didn't land. And in an abundance mindset, you believe there are plenty of resources for everyone. In a scarcity mindset, you cause hyperfixation, short-term coping instead of long-term problem solving, and increases jealousy and stress. And for a more abundant mindset, advocate for collaboration, practice gratitude, notice automatic thoughts, and give when you can. So how to engage moving forward. Again, I set us up for this. We'll get tactical, and it'll literally be like, do you have X hours a week to contribute to a committee that meets this often, et cetera. We'll get tactical in the follow-up. You'll get an email that's like a summary of what happened here so you can share it with your network. Thank you to Pam Bixby for preparing that. That's another call that we had last time. We didn't give you information back soon enough. So you'll share it with your networks, and then you'll also have an opportunity after percolating on it to see what you want to commit to. And the conference swag, which Gabriella gave me, what we're going to give you a few years ago, and it's one of my favorite things. So if you do the survey, I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, and some ideas, but again, we'll percolate, and you guys can reach out to me and go add this to it. There'll also be in other columns you can add in, but these are kind of the buckets of where we see there is opportunities already. And I also say, would pitch your own idea, and our answer will be yes and then this is giving me an opportunity to call it the Society of Trauma Nurses. They're always the biggest funder, which doesn't matter in a quantitative sense, but man, it matters in a qualitative sense, right? That like, the reason I got involved with them is because they started the Center for Global Trauma Quality Improvement. However long ago, they had trauma nurse coordinators from around the world pinging the trauma nurse coordinator and saying, hey, do you have a protocol for this? Do you have a guideline for that? And they would all just help each other. And then finally they was like, maybe we should like do this in a together organized way. And so then they founded it and they fund it and they don't ask anyone for money. In fact, they give it away. So they have been great leaders in this, and thank you to Leanne Young and Linda Reinhardt. I already commented on porosity. We're almost done here. So thank yous. I want to thank, again, last year we got to thank Amanda Nichols, wherever you are, from the Gates Foundation for being our co-facilitator. And this year, cat's crying, so it's messing me up. We get to thank Chelsea Church and Shannon Rosenauer. And these guys have had, we've had a lot of 6 a.m. meetings, and they have to have like 9 p.m. meetings in their sector. So like, oh, that sounds terrible. And they have just done a lot of work, like line editing stuff and just moving quickly. And again, no, there's nothing on paper. We haven't signed anything. They literally are just giving away their time for free. So thank you. Okay. Yeah, they get it. We'll do it after. Yeah, you're right. We all know this, but oh my gosh, like I don't get to be in this position if it weren't thanks to Center. And I mean, Michelle has turned around Google Accelerator grants in 36 hours in the last week, and I don't get a shot to do any of it. I'm at Medical Center Rockies. We don't have a grants office. If I got a government grant, my hospital would go, huh? Where do we put that? But like, because the Coalition of Nostril Trauma Research exists, whoever you are, if you have an idea, you can go to their scientific advisory committee and you get mentorship like people like Dr. Bolger and Dr. Zarzar and so many others to elevate. So thank you to them. Gabriella. This is my big sister, that's my little sister. So Gabrielle is a Peruvian physician we've worked with for 8 years who has done a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff and is the reason that we can turn things into papers. And soon she'll be a full-time research scientist at UC Health. Wants to be a surgery resident someday. And then Jackie and Danielle are our residents Cat Cup Column interns. That's a big problem. Our residents from Medical College of Wisconsin who are donating their time also. And so I tried to, there's some vague pseudoscience around this, and it was like, wasn't going to hold up to snuff in this context. I can't quote non-real science, but there's some science that when we are choosing love, our prefrontal cortex is engaged versus fear, we're in a state of amygdala overactivation. We don't make good decisions. So again, I think this is a space where we've seen a lot of things get siloed of, oh, I'm afraid if I compromise in this way, or if I fit my widget to their widget in that way, then I'll lose something, and so then we've never put the widgets together, is one hypothesis of why we haven't done this yet, and I'm just hoping this time can be different. And then I'll leave last with a story. We lived in Southeast Africa and Malawi, and this is kind of what started me being interested in implementation science. And we did pediatric malnutrition research and literally did randomized controlled trials that informed the World Health Organization guidelines for malnutrition. And we would go into communities and just do pretty rigorous work that was literally just weighing and measuring babies and then giving food to kids who met criteria and then comparing different types of therapeutic foods. Ready-to-use therapeutic food is the food that was the standard at the time. The people who lived in the community who were in Peace Corps volunteers, were always like, how do you get so many people to show up? Because when you guys have a clinic, then the line's out the door, whatever, and no one comes to things I'm hosting. And we talk about what they're doing. They say, oh, we're doing a candle-making exercise. And I go like, no, we want your candles. You didn't ask people what they wanted. You didn't bring them something of value. It was like narrowly intentioned, not well researched. But I think if we bring something of value, kind of in line with doing the right thing is always the right thing. Like if we bring something of value, there's a lot of pain points here and people are ready for a solution. So it feels like, in dissemination, we have push and pull. And I think part of this is we build something of value and there's going to be a strong pull. That's it. Now you get time to, oh, nope. No, you're not done. You're not done. I'm going to stand at the back. And same thing for our remote colleagues. Thank you so much. I've attended remote events before, and man, it can feel sterile and lonely out there. So thank you. I know that we have like a very strong remote participation the whole time, and that means a lot. So thank you to all of you who are out there at home, many of you who are ill. Oh, thanks, Mike.